Hello and welcome to The Hub. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. As the conflict in Ukraine enters its third month, the West is leading the offensive on the cultural front. Institutions rush to distance themselves from Russian scholars, while operas in the rest of Europe have banned Russian performers and composers. Now, the Cannes Film Festival in France have also said that the official Russian delegation was not welcome. How does the art world react to this new type of cancel culture? Is culture another battlefield, less bloody perhaps, but more pervasive? Earlier on, I talked to Vittorio Scarbi, art critic and former undersecretary at the Ministry of Culture in Italy.
Sir, welcome to the Hub on CGTN. First of all, I want to ask you about this cancel culture on Russia. We saw the scale of sanctions conducted by the West against Russia has in fact expanded into culture and sports. For example, one of the most famous Russian conductors in the world, Valery Gergiev, was fired from the Munich Philharmonic Orchestra for not denouncing Vladimir Putin. What do you think about the decision?
È un errore grave perché la cultura unisce e non divide.
It's really a big mistake because culture should unite people, not split them up. Do you remember Greece under the colonels? People were not allowed to read Plato and Aristotle. Therefore, the idea of limiting the spread of Russian culture is just a kind of cultural arrogance. It is understandable on a personal level, as one musician may not want to play Tchaikovsky. It's a personal choice. An institution, a mayor, or a minister cannot decide whether Russian music can be played by musicians or whether Russian literature be mentioned by critics or writers, just because Russia attacked Ukraine. A case in point is the ban on Dostoevsky at a university in Milan. War and culture are two totally different things. Culture is universal. Pirandello, for example, was a great playwright. Though he joined the fascist party, his work was widely read even after Italy became a democracy. And he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Therefore, there's no connection between one's literary achievements and political choices. These are two different things. If a person says, "I don't want to play Russian music," or "I don't want to read Russian literature," I can understand it. But institutions should not be governed by politics, even if it is to protect victims. It doesn't make sense. There's no logic. It is not reasonable at all.
È una cosa che non ha nessun significato, non c'è nessuna logica, è impossibile perfino pensarlo.
But sir, do you think arts and the artists can be completely separated from the world of politics?
Beh, diciamo, è difficile fare un ragionamento sulla responsabilità individuale di un intellettuale. In questo caso un direttore d'orchestra come
I don't think we should force intellectuals to take a position for or against the government. Like in the case of Valery Gergiev, the famous conductor. He may be Putin's friend or have a positive view of Putin, like many Russians do. But interpreting Tchaikovsky or Beethoven has nothing to do with one's political leanings. Does famous Argentinian writer Jorge Luis Borges not deserve the Nobel Prize simply because of his relationship with Pinochet? I think political choices have nothing to do with one's artistic achievements. The idea that someone cannot play Beethoven or Tchaikovsky because of their close relationship with Putin is unreasonable. In our world, we have a lot of Brecht, a great communist playwright who worked in the West for his whole life. Ideology does not hamper one's creation. This is a very stupid idea. If the ordinary people in Ukraine don't want to listen to Russian performers, I think I can understand it. But it is not right for the state to ban a country's culture, because no matter what your ideology is, be it fascism, communism, or supporting Putin, it has nothing to do with art. I can understand it at the personal level, but if it rises to national level, I think it's wrong, even absurd.
Paolo Nolli, an Italian professor, earlier stated that the University of Milan Boccaccia postponed its course on Russian writer Fyodor Dostoevsky, citing the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. He said that in Italy, not only the living Russians are guilty, but also the dead ones. Is this outright racism?
This is outrageous. Paolo Nori was right to quit the University of Boccaccia. For a university not to let its professor talk about Dostoevsky's literary work is a repressive measure, like that of a violent military regime. Both are repressive, and though the degree is different, the intent is the same. Dostoevsky lived way before Putin's time. Banning his work today is tantamount to equating him with Putin's ideas, Putin's political ideas. How is that possible? How can we link Putin's ideas and policies with Dostoevsky? That's outrageous. For example, shall we be banned to read Ariosto just because there was fascism in Italy? It doesn't make any sense. Therefore, when the president of the university said that Paolo Nori could not teach Dostoevsky's work, it was a cultural crime, worse than censorship during fascism.
The artists and curator behind the Russian pavilion and the Ukrainian pavilion have both withdrawn from the Venice Biennale. How big a loss would it be?
Nel caso della chiusura del padiglione russo c'è evidentemente una posizione politica che io non condivido.
Banning Russia from the Venice Biennale is obviously the result of political considerations, and I don't quite agree with this approach. The Biennale is a stage for all the culture in the world. This move is like a sanction imposed by the United States and Europe on Putin. But this is wrong, because art is often used to criticize governments. It is unreasonable to prohibit artists from participating in the Venice Biennale, even though I can understand it. The absence of Ukraine is primarily due to the war. They are occupied by Russia and cannot participate in the exhibition. These are two different situations. The absence of Ukraine is also a statement of solidarity with the Ukrainians, but banning Russia from participating is more a political statement, like sanctions against Russia by the United Nations, the United States, and Europe. But they are imposing sanctions on Russian culture, which is wrong. Ukraine's absence is more due to force majeure. Ukrainians are not in the mood or able to participate in the Biennale. Maybe we can help them make art creations reflecting their experience and participate in the Biennale symbolically. By the way, I'm at the Biennale now.
Io tra l'altro sono alla Biennale adesso.
But some say, this kind of cultural sanctions against Russia will help change the calculation of President Vladimir Putin. Do you think this is the case? Do you think cultural sanctions against Russia will somehow have any impact on the situation in the battlefield?
Non c'è nessun rapporto. Putin non ha
Banning Russian culture has nothing to do with the war. Putin may not care about Venice Biennale at all. He may not know about the event at all. He doesn't pay any attention to the Biennale. And he won't stop the war because Russia is banned from the Biennale. Russians are being punished. This behavior is a punishment on Russian culture, not on Putin. We can impose sanctions on Putin. However, sanctions cannot be imposed on culture. They have no impact on Putin's military action. It's only a symbolic move. Russians are punished, and it does not help prevent Putin's actions in this war.
Per cui non vedo nessuna relazione fra la censura alla Biennale e la volontà di Putin rispetto a questa guerra.
Finally, I want to ask you about Russophobia. I mean, this is not the first time or day one since we've come to see Russophobia or Russophobia in the Western world, right?
La russofobia è una posizione che è inaccettabile sul piano non solo culturale ma anche politico, perché significa
I hope that Russophobia will soon be over. Russophobia is not acceptable both at the cultural level and at the political level. Russian culture is a vital part of the world culture. Russia has Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Gogol, Mayakovsky, and a lot of prominent writers and artists. They mean a lot to the world. They have nothing to do with Putin's political actions or his military operations. Once Gergiev was asked to conduct, but he decided to turn it down. He himself turned it down. The reason was the current anti-Russian attitude and sanctions on Russian culture. I believe that time will restore dignity to the Russian world and prevent meaningless sanctions. All sanctions are wrong. I agree with the Chinese government on this point. Sanctions on culture are even worse. It is a crime against civilization.
Le sanzioni alla cultura sono un orrore contro la civiltà.